Hi, my name is Danny, and I'm going to be talking you through our poster entitled Applicability of Sodium Salts as Bitter-blocking Excipients. This is a BATA case study with which we use two bitter paediatric drugs. So a little bit of background first of all. Bitter blockers are compounds which act directly on receptors in the oral cavity, which are responsible for conveying bitter taste perception. So these receptors are known as TAS2 receptors. And if we can prevent their activation, for example, using excipients, we can stop that intense bitter taste that many drugs exhibit. Children are often given liquid medications, as we know, and therefore the drug is in solution and is able to interact directly with these TAS2 receptors, and we get that really awful taste. So our rationale is that we can use bitter blockers, so for example, sodium salts, to offer more of a taste neutral formulation rather than just trying to mask the bitterness with sweeteners, flavorings, things like that, which can have their own limitations. We actually target at the source and create a taste neutral formulation. Sweeteners can often have bitter aftertastes themselves and can have a limitation to their concentrations that can be effective. So it's basically a different avenue for the taste masking toolbox. So this work here continues on from some work that was presented last year. We are looking at three bitter-blocking sodium salts in particular, which are sodium acetate, sodium gluconate, and sodium AMP. We chose these because our initial literature review highlighted them to have an excellent safety profile and really excellent usability, and also they have previously demonstrated efficacy in humans. So then within the group, we carried out some e-tongue work to initially understand at what concentration these bitter blockers can start to become effective. And then being informed from these experiments, we then ran them through the rat BATA model. So the BATA model is the brief access taste aversion model, and it is an animal model of palatability that has been shown to highly correlate with the human situation. So we used the BATA model to assess our three excipients against quinine at 2 concentrations, and we found that sodium gluconate and sodium AMP offered some benefit. So the work that I'm presenting to you today carries on from this and is further investigating the utility of these sodium salts as bitter blockers. This time we're running them alongside 2 model bitter paediatric drugs to see really where they could fit into the taste masking toolbox. In terms of our methods, our BATA setup uses 10 rats who are exposed to a range of solutions over a number of experiments containing pemmican phosphate and ranitidine hydrochloride as our model bitter pediatric drugs. We used all 3 bitter blockers again, and we used a range of concentrations which were informed by our previous e-tongue and BATA work. So the 2 drugs were evaluated at therapeutic strength. Ranitidine was also evaluated at its IC50 concentration because it is a well-established model drug within the group, so we knew this concentration, and so we can look at that as well. The BATA model essentially looks at lick rate, and you can compare the lick rate in a set period of time compared to water, which is our standard. So you can compare everything to water and see how aversive or not your formulation is. So that was a quick rundown of the methods. In terms of our results, we saw that sodium gluconate was able to significantly improve the palatability of IC50 ranitidine. The lowest concentration tested of sodium gluconate managed to do this, that's 75 millimolar. Interestingly, the top concentration of sodium gluconate, which was 1,000 millimolar, actually started to have a slightly detrimental effect on the palatability of the formulation. This wasn't unexpected because I've previously done some work looking at the acceptability of these sodium salts on their own, and they tend to be well accepted, but for sodium gluconate, it's fully palatable up to 300 millimolar, and then 1,000 millimolar, and the palatability starts to decline. Unfortunately, none of the 3 bitter-blocking sodium salts were able to improve the palatability of the therapeutic concentration of ranitidine. Looking at primaquine now, both sodium AMP and sodium gluconate improved the palatability of this bitter drug by 76 and 116% respectively. So those numbers sound quite good, and they are. But this drug is very aversive in the first place. So even with, for example, 116% improvement in palatability, that formulation is not going to be acceptably palatable to children. So although this was positive, it doesn't actually give us a fully palatable formulation as we'd hope. So just to kind of summarize, these bitter blockers have great potential for liquid formulations for children to provide more of that taste neutral formulation that I was mentioning earlier. Especially these 3 sodium salts that we're talking about here have excellent safety and usability, so they're really ready to go. Our findings suggest that potentially sodium gluconate of the 3 in particular could offer improvement to medicines which aren't so intensely bitter, and can actually offer a new kind of avenue to explore for formulators when traditional sweeteners have limited use. Perhaps even sodium salts and sweeteners could actually be used in combination. That's kind of sweet and salty approach to reduce the concentration of sweetener that's actually required. So that's everything. Thank you very much for your interest.